And we very much look forward to hearing what Jon Carter from Company X Consulting has got to say. Welcome, Jon.
Brilliant, Andrew. Thank you ever so much. So one small confession, I am not ex-military. I am ex-civil service, but please don't hold that against me. But I've worked alongside the military now for getting on for a quarter of a century, having done sort of 20 years working in MOD before I stepped out into the consultancy world. But thanks everyone for sort of joining this afternoon. Hopefully you'll find some of the information I present useful. I've tried to keep it at enough of a top level to give you guys, if you're thinking of taking that step forward now, certainly if you're sort of transitioning out of the armed forces and taking that step into consultancy, hopefully this will give you some things to think about, some options that are out there, and sort of help you on that journey. So for those who've sort of not met me before, as Andrew said, Jon Carter, I'm the Business Development Manager for Company X Consulting Limited. I also sit as one of our 5 company board members. I very much head up in the business, the sort of strategy and growth, client engagement, but I also look after recruitment for the business as well. So, that's a key element of sort of growing our business and helping veterans. The company, as you can see the logo there, you may recognise it. It's very veteran focused. The business currently, all but myself and one other, are veterans. So I'm very much the sort of the odd one out, or one of the odd ones out in this company. We have a large raw signals contingent, but again, we have diversified now. We're bringing in consultants from across all trade groups, all cap badges. We've got RAF in the business now, Navy in the business, direct entry and late entry officers, as well as non-commissioned grades. So very much we look to bring people in based on the sort of value that they have, their approach, and whether we think they're a good fit for the business. So I'm going to crack straight into this. Company X Consulting Limited, what on earth are we? What do we do? Well, I guess our strapline there, we offer this secure and a family approach to a career in consultancy. And what on earth do I mean by that? Well, the secure element, unlike other businesses, what we do is we agree to take on the risk for people joining us. So all of our staff, permanent members of the team, they're all salaried individuals with a reasonable benefits package, healthcare, dental care, travel and subsistence costs covered, Christmas dues, etc. So the same as any other permanent job. The family element to it, well, we try to look after each other. Although we're providing our people as consultants, we try to operate as a team. We try to look after each other. We do lots of things together. Any singleton resource we might provide knows they've got that real strength in depth of the company behind it. And obviously we're a consultancy, so we provide consultancy services. And for us, this is about not just becoming a consultant, taking a role and then us kicking you off somewhere else. People join us to follow a career path in consulting where they can jump around multiple clients, develop their skills, but have that support and that risk managed for us, by us as a permanent employee. Right, let's get the slides working. There we go. So the first question, you want to be a consultant. For me, for those stepping into consultancy, really, there's 2 things they've got to consider. This is your time now to make the choice about what you do next. And that choice should really be categorized by how much risk you want to take in those first steps. And I'm going to try and explain what I really mean by that. I give this presentation, or varieties of this presentation, to lots of different audiences, and I'm always surprised how sit there listening to consultancy brief, and when you ask them what consultancy is, you sort of see a sea of blank faces. So I'm going to try and make it really clear. Consultancy is 3 things, okay? It's about provision of industry recognized skills, and I'll unpick what that means. It's to a client, okay? So you're providing those skills into a client area, and it's going to be for a period of time. Generally, they're not permanent placements. So if I unpack that a little bit, what do I mean by industry recognized skills? A lot of people come to me and say, I've just finished 24 years in the armed forces. I've got lots of leadership and management, and I've got an MBA. Those generally aren't the sorts of skills that consultancy are looking for. They tend to be the 5-day courses. For example, project management, I'm going to expect people to have looked at Prince 2 or Agile or Scrum or APM or SAFe training. Those going into cyber services, it's going to be things like your CISPs and your CISMs and your ISACA memberships. Those who want to go into change management, well, guess what? You're going to need to have change management practitioner as a 5-day course behind you. Consultancy, those are the sorts of industry recognized skills that the market are generally looking for. It can be pretty harsh, that market, and you'll find a lot of the times the first sift that takes place is probably going to be conducted by an agency member of staff, maybe a sort of foreign national that's come in to do something, or where it's been outsourced. They're not going to understand a lot of the time the value and the experience that you guys have. That's where those 5-day courses absolutely come into their own. So those who are sort of in a transition phase at the moment, if you've got ELCs still behind you, you've got access to things like the ILX portal, or if you're taking that step into cyber, have a look at the courses, the 5-day courses, look at the certificates you can get and the memberships you can join. They will absolutely pay dividends in your career. So you guys have got to work out that skill set you want to market, look at the courses. That's the industry recognized skill bit I'm referring to. So the second bit, the clients. Well, the client can be anybody. Could be defence and government. Most of you are going to have come out of a defence and government environment. Most of the people that we employ have as well. But we're not precious about that. Arguably, it could be Tesco's or banking or retail. It doesn't really matter. It's any client out there that's got a need for those skills, right? When I talk about choice, you guys have got to think about the skill set, but also think about the client. If you're transitioning out of the armed forces after sort of 24 plus years potentially, is that the area you want to go back into? It's probably quite a soft landing because you'll understand the language and the culture and the sea of 3-letter acronyms. It can be a good first step, certainly for veterans going back into that area, but that's got to be your decision. Skills that you'll bring forward with your careers, and if you can underpin them with those courses, they are transferable to other sectors. So go and do your homework, go and talk to those areas. Don't be afraid to ask them questions. You're in control of this now. Also be aware of the reasons clients need that cover. You see a whole variety of it, whether it's a project that's been stood up, that's got an outcome, might run for 6 months and they bring a team together. You could be one of those teams. Or civil service land, you could be covering a maternity or a paternity vacancy. You might be filling a gap because there's a struggle bringing in permanent recruitment. Could be absence cover, could be skills deficiencies. It's worth asking those questions when you go for consulting roles, whether you're there to sort of fill a gap or are you there to deliver an outcome. Final bit, the period of time. It's going to have a start and an end date. Everybody that we place with our clients that we hold, they're going to start on day one and they're going to be there for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. I've got consultants that I've placed with a client. 4 years later, they're still with the same client because the client likes them and doesn't want to lose them. But as long as you understand, it is not a permanent job when you go to the client. You are there for those periods of time. Fair enough, the starts or the end dates do jump around. The other thing it's worth understanding is that on average, a contracting year looks at about 220 days with a client. Okay, so when you take a contract, if it's a 6-month contract, work on the expectation that 110 days of the year you're going to be on the client site or working remotely, but doing client business. Why do they use those figures? Well, it's simple maths. 365 days in a calendar year. Well, if you remove from that the 220 days you'd be on task consulting, remove weekends, remove bank holidays, remove 25 days leave that most companies will allocate to you, or you should be allocating to yourself if you go down the independent route. That leaves about 8 or 9 days left over if it's a leap year or not. The expectation is those 8 or 9 days are your professional development days or family commitments. But that's generally where the calculation comes from. You do see varieties of it. Sometimes you'll see a 230-day contract or a 210, but that's the average, and that just helps to explain it. So I talked about risk, okay? So you've decided you want to go into consultancy. You've got your head around the skill set that you want to deliver, the sorts of clients, and you've got your head around you're going to be delivering them to a period of time. You've got three options available to you. Go and work for a big company. There are plenty out there. Your Deloittes, your KPMGs, your Fujitsus. They will offer you some fantastic looking salaries. They can be quite extreme. They're going to want their pound of flesh out of you. Of course they are. Don't expect to walk into a six-figure salary and not earn it. So the money can be very, very good. Hi, darling. Sorry, my kid's running around in the background. I tend to find as well in the larger companies, if you like climbing the corporate ladders and jumping around lots and lots of different pillars of an organization, of course you're going to see that in a larger company because they've got those structures, potentially a global footprint. So again, work out what your drivers are for this. You know, if you want to move around, jump around, climb the greasy pole, as they say, a large company will help you do that. The only sort of negatives could be with a large company is that you have very much a reduced ability to influence where you're going, certainly in a consulting type role. If you go into a company, say, I don't know, Atkins, Deloitte, they're going to secure a package of work with a client. So let's say they've won something with a defense client. They're going to be looking for resources to fill that. And if they bring you in on a nice high salary, you're going to be in there delivering to that client. But if that client comes to an end, that role finishes, that package of work is complete, you're going to be following that company wherever they look to next for the next work. And there's always that risk if you start 1 week working in Horsham, Defence Digital as an example, that work finishes, and then their next package is in London. Providing you're happy to make that change, just be aware of it. And of course, there's always that risk of being lost in the noise with a big company. Not always, but go with your gut feel on this. Ask them questions. Always ask about travel and subsistence. You know, a 50k salary offer with a 10 grand car package sounds lovely, but remember your 10 grand car package, if it's paid as salary, is going to be taxed at 40%. So again, do your maths on what the travel and subsistence packages really look like. Sit down and work it out. Put a pin in the map, work out your mileage, work out your food costs. If they're expecting you to go into London at your cost and your accommodation on it, 80k can start to feel like 30 after a few months of traveling. I've experienced it. Do your maths. So my little slide is there as a kind of visual view. Money's fantastic. Risk kind of in the middle if you're willing to take it, but your family time can really be hit. I've turned down offers of significant salaries because actually watching my children grow up was far more important to me. So that's the career path I've chosen to take. So the next one on here, independent. Well, guess what? You can do this on your own. Go and set yourself up as Joe Bloggs Limited Consultancy. You can set yourself up as what's known as a PSC, Personal Services Company. You become the majority shareholder of it. If you're clever, you pay your husband or wife or partner a small salary below the tax threshold, and you discount the cost of your house and everything else, and you can become really quite tax efficient. So potential for high earning, absolutely significant. Land yourself a role at £500 a day, 220 days on task a year, you're going to do all right. You've got to plan financially though, because remember that risk is yours. If you've landed your first role with a client as Joe Bloggs Limited, brilliant. I'm taking all the money, I'm being really tax efficient. You know, I'm living the rock star lifestyle at this point. Suddenly that client has their budget pulled and you find yourself back at home. If you've not put money in the bank and you've not got a contingency plan, that is going to feel quite uncomfortable. And all that extra generation you've made is going to start paying for your mortgage and the credit card bills and your children, etc. Those with a sort of significant military pension often afford and can enjoy it quite nicely. Do the maths yourself. It's worth pointing out that first step into consultancy, understanding that network of consultants, frameworks, recruiters. It's a used car salesman market out there. It's quite difficult to traverse on a first step. My final point on there, you need to do your homework on this, guys. Look at IR35, Intermediary Regulation 35, okay, implemented by HMRC in 2021 and rolling out across the public and private sector. In really big handfuls explanation, if I was an independent consultant, set myself up as Jon Carter Limited, and I've sold myself to a client at £500 a day, if the role is outside of the IR35 regulation, I said I could pay my wife a small salary of 11,000, don't pay tax on that. I'd offset my mortgage because I'm working from home, don't pay tax on that then. I'd offset my laptop, my phone, my food, my car, and then whatever's left, I'd probably pay myself a salary of £11,000, don't pay tax on it. Whatever's left, I'd pay myself in dividends, which you only pay 20% tax on. So I could do really well out of it. IR35 is stopping that happening. It is looking to tax your £500 a day at source. So you suddenly find your £500 is reduced by 47.2%. You still then, as a limited company, need to apply some tax and deductions on the back of that as well. So again, read up on it, guys. If you're going down the independent route, you need to understand what it means. And when you see things advertised as inside or outside R35, you'll know what it means. The final option I've put on there, and I've put us as a company in there, CXE Limited. We're a small to medium enterprise consultancy company, okay? Go and do your homework on what an SME is. It's generally dictated by the size of your organisation. You get a category given to you. We're small to medium because we are currently around the 50 people and we turn over less than £100 million a year. Our offer as a consultancy in the market, well, the money's good. It's competitive. It's certainly above industry standard. I don't pluck my salary figures out of thin air. We tend to look at someone's background, the level of skill they have, and how marketable their skill set is, and what I could get for them as a day rate. We then do some quite open calculations on that, and we'll make a salary offer around that. Because remember, guess what? We're taking all the risk on. And what I mean by that, when I employ someone, they're salaried. If they're off task, sat at home waiting for the next role, they are still paid. If I put them to a client and that role suddenly ends early, they are still paid. And they get the benefits of the security, the pay rises and everything else. That's that sort of risk approach that we have. So money's kind of above average, but the risk is managed by us. And the final bit there, that family time, well, I don't dictate to people where they go. I will need to understand where people are based, what their sort of home is, what their aspirations are for travel, and I'll try my level best to place people within an area or a locality or a commutable distance that works for them. Now, I can't promise everything I'm going to get right here. If you live in the Outer Hebrides and you come to me to say you want to work in defence, but you're only willing to travel 20 minutes a day, guess what? That's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to make that work for you. I can try and find you a hybrid role, but it's going to be really difficult to sustain the company and the risk that I hold. You guys have got to have that decision when you're transitioning out, thinking about buying a house, thinking about the clients you want to work with. Get a view for what that could look and feel like. COVID's been a benefit in that space. Most people now can work remotely or flexibly. In fact, I think all of our company to a degree now are working from home with periodic travel into London. That makes it easier. But if you're going to go into, say, an above secret or a UKIC environment, it's going to be a bit difficult to do that from a remote location. You're going to need to travel. Our company generally supports the travel costs, the accommodation costs on top of salary. But again, we can talk about that at a later point. So I've talked a lot about kind of choice and risk and the options available. Well, these are really the sort of two questions you need to take away. What is it you want to do now? If you've decided consultancies for you, and I keep banging on about this, you've got to work out what your industry recognized skill set is that you're looking to market. Turning up in the consultancy environment as, well, I'm a great leader, or I'm good at working in operations. Well, what do you mean by operations? Do you mean that you've worked in an operational environment, or do you mean that you've done sort of service management operations in, say, the ITIL construct? You need to understand the industry language there. What you probably mean is that you've used to delivering projects in an austere or an operational environment. So again, have a think about that skill set. Think about the qualifications, use your ELCs wisely. Again, we can give you plenty of advice and guidance on that. And if you're not familiar with it and you're on ModNet, get on the ILX portal. You can pretty much do most of these industry recognised qualifications now. The training course is free of charge. Then you only need to worry about funding the exams on the back of it. Makes it very cost effective. Again, think about locations, organisations, etc. The second question, that how piece, well, that plays to what I've just briefed you on. Go and look at large companies. Go and look at small companies. Go and look at setting up on your own so you've got a nice balance of fact. Make a decision based on what your drivers are. If you're married or in a relationship, have that conversation with your partner. If you have children or dependents, bring them into that. Quite often I've seen people transition out of the armed forces and not had that conversation. If their other half is expecting them after 25 years to suddenly be at home a little bit more, and then they turn around and say, well, actually, I'm off to London 5 days a week, I'll see you on the weekends, that can be quite difficult. I'll flip that though. I have got people in the business who I'm pretty sure their relationships survive because they work away from home. So you know, again, ask the question. Commutable distance, don't underestimate it, because you need to do that calculation on travel costs. And again, if you decide to be an independent or a big company, if you're traveling 50, 100 or train fare to London every day, it's quite expensive. Do the maths. So, giving you loads of sort of information which is a bit generic, I'll give you a few specifics on us just to kind of help fill in some of the blanks towards, you know, before we get to the end of this. Small to medium enterprise, well, said that's what we are. I'd go and look at the differences in category. What large companies have different policies, different governance structures versus micro companies, etc. All of my current employees we have handpicked, and I've generally handpicked them because they're very professional. They have good values, good moral compass, and they fit the bill for our company. I don't generally recruit against skill sets. I can develop skills. What I can't develop is personal attributes. But all those people that we've brought in as a company, there are 3 ways I provide them. I'm either providing them out to clients, guess what, with a skill set for a period of time, winning pieces of work. Company, I might go in and say to an organisation, we could deliver your project management office function, and I may win that, and then I can lean into the company to say, great, I've won a package of work, I need 5 project managers and a control officer and something else. So we do placements, we do bid work. There's something else we do, the services side, and it says there including TSCM. We've got a couple of services we deliver in this company as well, whether it's business continuity services to clients. I'm doing some of that in the Highways Agency at the minute. We've also got a suite of technical surveillance countermeasures equipment. So for those that are familiar with what that is, we're one of the only other approved purchasers of that equipment in the country, but we can go out and ensure that a property, high net worth individuals, yachts, football stadiums, offices have not been compromised for security, i.e. there's no bugs in your light bulbs or your phone line's not been tapped. Certainly for organisations that might be talking about sensitive stuff. For those that were maybe at the DSCI or the Farnborough International Air Show, you had companies going around early doors, bug sweeping all of the stands to make sure that there was no sort of Russian intelligence that had got in and were trying to sort of listen in on business deals. We do a bit of that in the background, the security element of it, not bugging people. The company's geographically agnostic, so I'm not precious about where we put people. I try to make it work for their choices, but as I said with my earlier example of the Outer Hebrides, it's got to be realistic. But I'll quite happily place people anywhere in the world if there's a requirement to do so, and that's the step they want to take. I've already touched on this. All of our staff are PAYE, so pay as you earn. They get a pay slip, tax is managed, national insurance is managed, pension is managed, the normal things you'd expect, which you guys will be used to. And I've got no cap on that. And as I continue to sort of diversify it, the only thing that holds me back is the quality of the individuals that we bring in. You know, if I could find 100 people overnight, I'd do my best to bring them into the business. That's the rain coming down here. Hopefully that doesn't drown me out. Penultimate bullet there about us all being predominantly from a defence and government background. It's not a requirement, but that's the main client
Andrew, can you see or hear us? Is it like a problem of my connection or?
He's obviously just been struck by lightning or something.
Oh, I hope not. Let's
I
wait for a second.
too.
He will be back.
Ah, am I back in the...
Yeah, you're back. Hi, John. Keep going.
lightning related power then, sorry. So yeah, sorry, the final bullet there was just saying we're only limited by having the right people, not the skill set. So we kind of joke around this, but if someone turned up and told me they were I don't know, a professional llama racer, if I can market that skill set and we think people are a right fit for the business, we would consider it. Probably not llama racing, but I don't focus on skills first. We focus on the quality of the individual and then help work out what the skills are. Culture is quite important to me. I hope you get a feel for the sort of family ethos that we have, the fact that we do try to look after our people, whether that's through Christmas do's or summer functions. Go and stalk us on LinkedIn. You'll see us doing lots of exciting things. We were driving across Europe a couple of weeks ago in support of SAFA on a veteran rally. That was fantastic. We've done aid runs to Ukraine because I think some of the guys wanted to get in and do something good. So we tend to do lots of things to sort of build that family. That reputation and that veteran focus has won a number of seem to be in the midst of a thunderstorm here. Apologies.
It's okay. Well, we can edit the video afterwards. Keep persevering, John. We can hear you loud and clear when you're on.
Brilliant. I'll keep going. So our requirement, so independently minded, high caliber individuals. I think you're getting that view from this brief anyway. But I need our guys to know that from my perspective, if we bring people in and we can support them with that family ethos, they're going to feel settled, which means they're more likely to stay with us for sort of 3 to 5 years. I do say to people, if they're going to take that step with us, have that 3-year minimum timeline in your minds, because we're going to invest quite heavily in our people. I like to see a return from them. We're not a stepping stone. Similarly, if they want to stay with us forever, that is always an option as well. We've got people who've been with this company for the last 10 years and continue to flourish. So, promise you, when you're nearing, I won't be getting too bored of me. It does mean quite a lot to me. You know, providing consultancy specialist outcomes and services. Well, guess what? That's just what we've been talking about and the ways we deliver it. My vision's quite important though. I want us to be a leading consultancy, not the leading consultancy. Difference there is that partnership and working alongside my competitors, I think, is a much stronger option than trying to fight and beat everybody. It is that approach that's led us to the breadth of stakeholders that we currently have. And I'll go into that in a minute. And you can see values being a massive part of what we do. Here's our current structure. There's been some tweaks of late, but it broadly still reigns true. You have a board of directors at the top, all ex-Royal Signals late entry officers. You have myself and a business manager kind of comprise that management board. We're supported by a very capable management team of managing consultants, again, all ex-military. And then we've got a layer of consultancy that sits at the bottom. Got a few extras in the company. Natalie, my resource lead, who some of you may meet in the future if you choose to come and talk to us, gives this brief far better than I do in a lot more detail, but she's generally that first point into the business. We are expanding, so looking to bring in recruitment consultants now and assistant business managers as we keep growing as a business. But that gives you an idea of the sort of structure. There isn't really the hierarchy in this though. You know, you're out of the military now. We're all working as professionals and we all work together. We try to be as sort of flat and fast as we can in our structure, and we only really promote from within, so we don't bring in externals into the management layer. There is still that career path that we can offer. So takeaways, you guys have got to get your head around that transition as you take that step. Get out of that military mindset now. You know, In the armed forces, you've been gaining your respect through the rank you've worn, the experiences you've had. Into industry, you're going to be gaining that through the actions that you decide to take. You're going to be empowered as consultants if that's the journey you take as well. So you will be looked at by every level of the business for advice and guidance. If you're going out as a consultant, they're going to be paying a day rate for you generally, and therefore they're going to expect a level of service from you. It's massively empowering. You can see the calculation there on day rates and leave. I just thought I'd add that in, but that just gives you some food for thought. There's a view of our stakeholders. So that's all the companies. Hello, Pickle. My little one's next to me. That's all the companies that we work with, or a snapshot of them. You can see there's some fairly major players in there. We're not precious about who we work with. I will sit both client side, and by that I mean might be delivering direct into MOD, or I might sit supplier side. I may be delivering into a company like MBDA, who's then delivering capability to defence. We'll sit quite happily and go back to that earlier definition. It's about skills to a client for a period of time. I'm not precious on the client, providing we've got the right skill set. Darling, do you mind giving me a minute? You may be able to see my 2-year-old's head popping up on the screen here. I'm sure she wants to come and say hello. This is really the last slide. Do your timelines as well. Look at your last day in uniform, i.e. your availability date. Look at your last paid date, because really the period between your availability date and your last paid date, that's the time that you really want to be trying to land something out there so you don't have that break in money coming in. I definitely recommend going and looking at things like the SC expos. There are a number of other expos that happen around the UK. Go and talk to people, go and talk to companies, ask all the questions you can. Look at your transition steps. TR1, TR2 for me is about pre-marketing and marketing. We'd cover that with you in detail anyway. It's also worth being aware of this sort of sine wave you can see. The consulting market becomes quiet 3 or 4 times a year. Periods, summer leave, end of financial year, things go quiet. It happens the same every year. Why? Well, because generally in defence and government, you've got a load of civil servants that are either out of budget at the end of March, so there's no money to spend, so they all pause. They go into Easter leave. You're then into summer. Well, for 2 weeks, most of the people are going to be off on leave. So guess what? No one's going to be running interviews or pushing consultancy adverts out. It goes quiet. Expect that. And Christmas. Most of defence and government will shut down for a couple of weeks over the Christmas period. So again, if you're looking for a job on the 13th of December, don't be surprised if it's a little bit quiet and you don't get a lot of feedback. So be aware of those periods. We're into it now into September, and I'm seeing all sorts of things starting to pick back up now. For my guys that I've got marketing, they've gone through that quiet phase of August where they've all had a load of self-doubt, and now they're back into kind of throwing CVs out there and interviewing and landing roles. Right, that's just over 30 minutes of me waffling. I hope some of that's been useful. I've seen loads of questions popping up. I've purposely not tried to read them. But really, Andrew, I guess back over to you to sort of any questions you want to throw at me.
Yeah, well, I'll feed those questions to you in a second. Could I just get the ball rolling and join the dots, if you like, between what the guys are doing now? Now, obviously, there's people from all sorts of different skills and backgrounds, but they're on a journey to achieve their professional certification on this program as a cybersecurity analyst. What would you recommend as their next step? Is it to get some experience as in an entry level role as a cybersecurity analyst, or should they align their newfound skills and some of the 5-day courses that you talked about earlier that lots of these guys have done or are doing, and jump straight into consulting? And I ask that question because a lot of the job descriptions that I see require 3 to 5 years experience of consulting or something very relevant. So for those guys who are coming new to this, perhaps not from an IT or tech background, what do you suggest is their best next step?
So that's a really good question. So first and foremost, qualifications. I think if you're going to step into that cyber environment, actually, that is the thing that's going to get you through in the first instance. So how deep you choose to go into that, as I said, whether you follow the route down your CISP and your CISMs and your ISACA memberships, that's going to hold you in good stead. That 3 to 5 years experience that lots of places are looking for, again, it depends on the sorts of clients you are looking at. In the consultancy environment, defence and government, don't downplay the experience you've had in the armed forces. You have been working, certainly if you're coming out as a yeoman of signals, for example, who's had a sort of background in this stuff, has done a lot of cyber work in the background, play that as your experience. Gear your CV up and present it in that way. A lot of the work we do with our candidates is actually they come to me with a military CV. We will try and flip it for them. The first line of your CV should tell me what you are. So if people, cybersecurity consultant, professional, first line should say that. Flip your military experience, move too many. But if you've been a role where you were dealing with crypto or cyber services or anything, maybe you've worked in the GOSC or something like that at some point, get that in and play it out as an example. 3 years working alongside it. There is no real difference between the level of SQEP from your military experience and what you've done working alongside those clients versus the consultant who is out there. If I am the hiring manager, I'm more likely to take somebody who's got a strong military background but understands the environment and the services they want to move forward with, rather than say a graduate who's come out without any of that real-time experience but the same level of qualification. So I think my simple advice would be focus on quals first. Don't downplay some of the experiences you've got from your military career. If you are really worried, there are lots of companies out there that will help you take that first step. We are one of them. C3IA, you could look at FDM as a model. There are plenty. Go and look at them. Go and ask the questions.
Thanks, John. Matt's asked a related question, which is about that sort of critical first contract. Once you've got something on the CV, you can build that. Would I be right in thinking that by working with an organization like yours, you're helping broker that first contract and then help people get moving? Is that essentially the difference between somebody setting themselves up as an individual consultant with their own business, trying to land their own contracts, and working for an organization like CXC?
Yeah, it's another really good question. So this comes back to networking. So if you're going to go and do this on your own, you're traversing that path without any support. If you've got a really good network of friends, colleagues, other service leavers who've gone out into businesses and know your background and your experience, you can probably find yourself into a placement reasonably simply. But remember, that risk is yours. Absolutely. A company like ours has kind of done that networking for you. So we've generated this sort of network of clients and businesses that we can deliver to, where we've built that trusted reputation. We're good enough at identifying people who have a really good cyber skill set where we can bring in and match them to roles. Therefore, our sort of support, our reputation, our network, people will take a lot of people from us because we're good at putting good people forward. So definitely comes down to networking. Company like ours will help you get your head around a lot of that for the first few years. And then really, if you decide to take a step after that, you'll probably find it a lot easier. But yeah, definitely the first step is always the most difficult to do. If you can do it in a supported way with colleagues, friends, don't be afraid to reach out to people you've worked with. You'll have a much greater chance of success.
Thanks. And not only is the first contract difficult, but going after the first qualification. Christina's asked a question, and by the way, Christina, a day rate is normally for an 8-hour day, and so you can work on an hourly, daily, or monthly rate. So Christina's asking about where to go to get the qualifications. We can help with some of that. So if you look via Skills Build, take on your analysis advice, there are a number of courses where you can do CISP type certifications through the program. Unlike the course you're on at the moment, the exam doesn't come with that, so you'd have to find the way to complete the exam yourself. But in terms of access to the content that's there, and there are various other free resources, I would encourage you to look around before you spend your ELC funding, because a lot of the things that CTP is charging you for, or the system is charging you for, actually you can now get for free. And if you need help with payment for exams and things, then a lot of the service benevolent funds and service charities will help out there, including the Legion and the benevolent funds. So again, coming from where these guys are now, they will have a professional certification as a cybersecurity analyst. Which of those CREST checks? There are 3 schemes I can name off the top of my head. Is there any one that you would say is better recognised by clients than others? Or do you see one that everyone goes, oh, you've got one of those? That marks you out from the crowd.
It's a good question. I'm not sure I'll give you the best answer for it. I'm going to break it down. How you get your qualifications, Andrew, you're absolutely right. There are lots and lots of different providers that can provide. You will see deals out there. We work quite closely with a company called Quanta, who sort of do us some good discounts. Again, the companies you talk to in terms of joining, ask them about what their training packages look like, whether they come with training budgets, whether they can give you discounted rates. In terms of, and this is quite a selfish answer, in terms of cybersecurity or information assurance for us, I keep coming back to that CISP, CISM, NIST, which is the sort of flavour of the month at the moment. Those 3, or certainly NIST seems to be the one that I see keep coming up at the moment. I'm seeing a lot of bid activity happening within our suppliers where they don't seem to be able to find individuals who have NIST qualification. So yeah, CISP, CISM, NIST, get your ISACA status if you can. Those would be the ones that I think as a senior level, you're going to do really well in that space. But actually, Andrew, as you've touched on, there's a whole suite of other cyber quals that you can do which sort of set you on that journey. I think what I would say is work out what you want to be, the option you want to take. And if you choose to move forward with a company, you need to press them. What is it they offer? What are the partnerships they've got with training suppliers? And how are they managing your continuous professional development? If you're going to do it as an independent, though, absolutely, I'd probably recommend going for the top. Get your NIST in the first instance. It will hold you in good stead. But by all means, reach out to companies like Quanta. They're very good for the veteran network.
I think we'd endorse what you said from the job descriptions that we see day in, day out. For those of you who were thinking about working in government related stuff, maybe this cyber check scheme and getting qualified up as a check team member, something like that. And some people will start from a background. If you've already got, for example, an ISO 27001 qualification, those sorts of things. And cyber, what's it called? Cyber Essentials Assessors is another. I think that's another quite a good way in, isn't it, John?
Yeah, implementers, auditors, 9001, 27001. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely worth looking at those as well. But again, if that's what you want to do, ask yourself those questions first.
Okay. There is a question here from Peter. Do you only consider recently leaving or currently leaving members of the armed forces? Any time limit on those who've left a few years ago, minimum number of years served, those sorts of things?
No. It's the quick. How I make an offer to someone, and let me explain that. For someone that approaches me 12 months out from their last paid date, if they go through our recruitment process and we decide to move forward together, fantastic. I'm going to be trying to land them something prior to their availability date, so that they can effectively finish with the MOD, start generating, banking a salary in the background, which we would then release to them. If you're already out and you've been out for some time, let's say, for example, you've gone off and worked in the charitable sector, your security clearance has lapsed, and you've come back and said, guess what, I'm looking to join your model. For us, we would probably look to do either some kind of split risk approach. We might work with you under a commitment phase in the background, where we effectively throw some free resource at you, cover your TNS, give you a laptop, mobile phone, all the other bits and bobs, but we probably wouldn't take on financial responsibility for you until we had something lined up for you. Remember that sort of family nature we have. If I offer someone a salary, I've got to explain to my other 50 colleagues that I'm paying this person because they're worthwhile. If I'm going to bring someone in with no clearance, no background, no skills, and they've sort of not done very much for a couple of years, that presents more challenge for us. But the answer is never no. We'll put anybody through that recruitment process and that selection. And if they hit the right criteria and they look like we're the right company for them, then I'm not concerned whether they've been out for a while, just got out, or in the transition phase. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned clearances there. Let's hover on that for a second. The painful process that it is. Obviously, some of the guys will have held on to their, at least their SCs. I assume you will. Are you looking for people who've already got those, or will you, as a company, sponsor people to gain relevant security clearances?
Yeah, so both. The advantage for me, certainly, of those who are in the transition phase is they have active clearance, whether that's an SC or a DV or even a green badge. In all cases, I will look to transfer the sponsorship of that clearance over to our responsibility, okay? And we would pay for the upkeep of that. It's easier if I've got a role to link them to, because I can normally demonstrate to the sponsoring body that I've got a contract that requires it, etc. But yes, in all cases, if you've got an active clearance and people join us, we maintain that for them, and we'll maintain that through their career. If they've got out and they've gone off and worked in whatever sector and that clearance has lapsed and they want to come back in, then yes, we've got mechanisms for switching it back on. Again, if I can link them to a piece of work, it enables me to do that. You'll be familiar with the timescales for this. If you've come out with a DV, 6 months, it'll stay sort of active, but at the 6-month point, it goes into a stasis. 6 months prior to that, it is then effectively shelved. So you would need to restart the process after 12 months away from a DV role. The current timeline SLA for restarting or a new DV is horrendous. I think it's in the hundreds of days at the minute. 242, I think, is the last SLA they've pushed out. SC clearance, I think they're running on, I can't remember, I think it's 40 odd days at the minute. It's improved slightly, but be aware of that timeline as well. SC pretty quick, DV pretty horrendous at the minute.
I'm sure it's on Liz Truss's list of things to sort out as an urgent priority, John, so we'll get over that. Right, well, we need to draw this to a close. I'm just going to go around the houses. Anya, you're dealing every day with looking at job descriptions that companies are coming out with as they relate to our candidates. Is there any questions or indeed advice you want to give to the team at this stage? You're on mute.
Apologies. Just that beware of job descriptions that you're reviewing. They are sometimes a shopping list of qualifications and desirables and essentials that clients would look to see. When we speak to hiring managers, we will always ask, what are they must-haves? What are they prepared to be flexible on? Will they take sort of military experience into bearing in that respect? So if you are dealing with organizations direct, don't be afraid to ask the question, but also don't be afraid to look at a job description and don't necessarily just discount yourself. Reach out to the recruiter, reach out to individuals, reach out to your network to get advice as to whether or not you should go forward for that role. So I think that's probably the key one for me, for individuals looking at opportunities.
I would add to that, let the hiring manager make the decision for you. Don't make the decision or discount yourself. Put yourself forward for it. If you think you've got about 60+% of it, A hiring manager would much rather take a good quality person who's got drive and enthusiasm, but a few skills deficiencies, rather than have a vacancy. So let the hiring manager decide for you.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice from both of you. We hear an awful lot of people who get the old highlighter out and go down the list of essential requirements and say, well, I haven't got those, therefore they self-select out. So I think, John, you're spot on there. We saw a job description which had 26 essential requirements on it, which begs the question to the client, are you actually expecting to recruit anyone? Because of course most of us would take one look at that long list and move straight on to the next one. Has anyone got any last unicorns? Yeah. Anyone got any last questions for John before we let him go and pay attention to his daughter?
Yeah, absolutely. You can make contact with me.
If there is like nothing else relevant.
We will send around the deck afterwards. John's contact details will be on there, Peter, for those of you who want to get in touch direct. And I think, Alice, have you got any other last points? No, nothing.
No, I will just stop recording then.
Okay.
Brilliant. But guys, girls, please do reach out.